If you grew up around the internet or spent any time browsing it in the early 2000s, you definitely remember these weird little games you could only access through websites. Those of course being Flash games, and man I miss these things. A lot of them were far from polished, but you don't really get to see people express themselves like this while creating games anymore. So today in my part 2 of Forgotten Flash Game Gems, I want to talk about the ones that you might have forgot existed entirely, or maybe you've never even played. A lot of Flash games seriously have a charm you just don't really see anymore, and now that a lot of developers either went to Steam or mobile, it's pretty frustrating trying to get your hands on some of these games unless they were properly archived. So let's talk about some of my favorites. The first game I want to talk about is Riddle School. I didn't even remember this game existed until recently when I opened the comments on my last video. And as soon as I searched it up and saw the character you play as, I instantly remembered this being one of the only escape games that really appealed to me. You pick up random objects, talk to other students, or mess with teachers to try to figure out these pretty complex puzzles depending how old you are when you play it. Escape games were really popular on Flash, and I remember one of my teachers in school even making us play these games to challenge our brains. They were pretty interesting in that aspect, but other than Riddle School, I was never a huge fan of the escape stuff. Riddle School came out in 2006 on Newgrounds, made by Jonah Chrome, and it actually got a bunch of sequels which take the main character Phil on even weirder adventures. I don't know why, but something about the way the puzzles work in this game is pretty satisfying. It's not that complex, but it actually is a lot of fun if you can get into it. I probably really liked this game when I was younger because it made you feel smarter than you actually were if you figure stuff out. It's exactly why I loved so many Flash games as a kid though. They were simple concepts but had enough content and charm to really keep you entertained. So if this game was placed in the back of your memory, I hope I helped you remember it, because that is the whole reason I make these videos in the first place. I want people to just kind of unlock memories that they forgot about. Next game up is Age of War. I kind of forgot how much I actually played this one until I looked at it again. It's an almost kind of tower defense game where you start in the Stone Age with cavemen and spears and defend your base while you try to destroy the other one. And your goal is to just kind of upgrade through the ages, medieval knights, modern soldiers, and by the end you're using tanks and lasers. It basically goes from sticks to sci-fi. Some battles are pretty hard and other ones are pretty easy, but it's always interesting watching the fights play out. It came out in 2007, published by Max Games. Hey, that's my name, that's pretty cool. And it's one of those games, like all the ones on this list, that you kind of just place in the back of your head and never really think about it again after you play it. And even now, I can honestly go back and enjoy this game a bit. It's really just fun to watch these little armies fight it out. I know there's a lot of simulators like this flooding the App Store. And yeah, I know people always bring up Stick War when they think of Age of War, but I never was a huge fan of that one. I just feel like all the Stickman stuff was so overdone and oversaturated at that time period, and the game had to be truly unique to stand out if the characters were going to be stick figures. In my opinion, of course. Let's go to the next game. Uphill Rush is a game I know you've seen before, and it has many sequels. That was sort of the Flash game trend though, give your game like 5 sequels instead of updating a few of them. I swear this one was everywhere on Flash sites to the point where it almost got annoying. But it might have been the only like Flash racing game I actually played. You start off on a bike or tiny motorbike, going through some of the most ridiculous level design I've ever seen for a racing game. This was a Flash game from around 2009 and it was on sites like A-Game, Addicting Games, it was pretty much everywhere. Armored Games, Go Girls Games, you name it. I played this game a lot at school because my school would block all of the cool game sites like Congregate and Addicting Games and Miniclip, so you'd really just have like Cool Math and a few other ones, but the more niche unblocked ones always had this Uphill Rush game, so that was funny enough where I played it the most. But yeah, I never really hear people talk about Uphill Rush in Flash game videos, and I definitely have a lot of memories with this one, so I'm sure a lot of other people do too. There were so many big IP websites like this hosting Flash games. You had Lego.com, Nickelodeon, and even Nerf. But the Cartoon Network games section of Cartoon Network was always one of my favorites. It's basically a whole bucket of random crap that lived on Cartoon Network's website back in the Flash days. They had these little rip-offs of every show you can think of, like Dexter's Lab, Gumball, Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls, all of it in these janky little Flash games that loaded right in your browser. But the Ben 10 ones were definitely my favorites. You'd mostly fight aliens or just do dumb objectives based on the show, and there was this one where you like design an alien that I can't find playable anywhere. These games were super unpolished sometimes too, and they were kinda weird. But I mean, what Flash game wasn't weird? They literally felt like they were made by someone who watched an episode once and then had to guess what the game should be. But they were good enough to keep me entertained as a kid, I guess. The whole site was this weird mismatch of cartoon characters, but damn, it makes me miss the old internet. I feel like a huge part of this experience was that you get to click on a game just because you saw your favorite character from a show. Yeah, some of them were terrible, and few of them were actually fun enough to keep you entertained for more than an hour, but that whole era of just clicking through a site of tiny flash games is something I really miss. Before we get to this next game, I don't think anyone could explain it better than the channel that inspired me to start mine myself. So here's ft.DebunkFile.
Something I personally spent too much time on as a child was Poptropica, a 2007 Flash game created by Jeff Kinney, author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. The game functioned on a multitude of revolving islands, each with their own stories to experience. Poptropica just felt so vast, and it genuinely blew my mind that it was just free to play. I didn't really have consoles growing up, so something this expansive felt so liberating. I'm not sure if you remember, or if I was just a stupid kid, but these Poptropica islands were hard. These were tough as nails puzzles that I usually never got very far into. The worlds were so vast, filled with superheroes, game shows, mysteries, and yes, even Greg Heffley. The ones I played the most were 24 Karat Island and Game Show Island. Game Show Island was genuinely just a game show. It felt like a playable version of something like Total Drama Island. 24 Karat Island was a deep-rooted mystery featuring the game's best character, the diabolical Dr. Hair. Speaking of Dr. Hair, I was so obsessed with this game as a kid, I even managed to collect some of the toys. I personally loved that 6-inch fully articulated Dr. Hair that looked right out of the game. The other merch was great too. I adored my Poptropica paperback handbook that helped me along the way of completing the islands. Poptropica is still around to this day and is still as fun as ever. If you miss it, return to the islands. They miss you. And if you've never played it before, be ready to embark on some larger-than-life Flash game adventures.
Huge thanks to ft.DebunkFile for explaining that section of the video. One game you probably remember is Raft Wars, and if you don't, it's a turn-based game where you control a group of kids defending a raft against levels of enemies. You take turns aiming and shooting, trying to knock off opponents from their rafts while upgrading your own cannons and ammo. It's a simple concept, but surprisingly strategic and well executed. Games like this and even Poptropica are almost too popular for a list like this, but they're too much of gems to not mention. For me, the most fun part about turn-based Flash games was that you can control multiple characters, so me and a friend or me and my sister would take turns playing the same game almost like a team. Even if it seems pretty simple and bare bones, Raft Wars is a huge piece of Flash game history that really matters. One game I don't really see people talking about is Sesh. I don't even know how many people actually played it, but for me it kinda connects everything I'm talking about in this video. This game was basically the Tony Hawk mixed with Skate 2 of Flash games. I started skating like 5 months ago, so going back to something like this feels way different than it used to. When I was younger, I played a lot of skateboarding games, but they were kinda just something to mess around with. I just spam buttons and not really think about how hard any of it actually is. But now that I actually get it, I'll see a trick in the game and immediately think how satisfying it would be to land in real life, or just how ridiculous it looks in the Flash game in the first place. And yeah, if you're curious, here's some of my progress so far. I know it's off topic, but yeah. I saw a comment about this game on my last video and it hit me with a huge wave of nostalgia because I completely forgot about it. And that game's Rolling Fall. It's another one of those tiny physics puzzle games you play and probably just completely forget about. The whole premise is simple. There are these heavy balls hanging from chains, and you kinda just gotta cut them and watch them whack the zombies hanging under them. It fit right into that whole violent era of Flash games where everything was super over the top. I made a video on this a couple days ago. It came out around 2010, but it's kinda hard to track the actual release date, and it was first on sites like Armor Games and Newgrounds. There are bonus levels in some versions and even a Rolling Fall 2 later on with more puzzles, but it was never anything huge, just a weird physics zombies game. God, Flash games used to love physics, same with early mobile games, that was a huge marketing thing for them. But yeah, I'm happy I saw that comment, otherwise I would have completely forgot about this game. Do you remember Monkey Go Happy? This one's kinda weird. It's a puzzle escape game kinda thing, and your goal is to make the monkey happy. I know it sounds lame, but it's actually pretty interesting. It came out around 2008, and I definitely wouldn't say it's the best Flash game ever, but it had this strange personality to it that I really liked, and it was a lot more wholesome than most Flash games. The monkey is also pretty iconic. I hope this isn't too personal of a pick and some of you actually remember it. Next is Ricochet Kills. This one I remember for being one of those so simple it's brilliant flash games. You've got a gun, a bunch of targets, and walls everywhere. You're supposed to bounce your bullets off stuff to hit the enemies. Sometimes you'll spend like 5 minutes lining up a single shot, and other times it just randomly works. It's not a game you'd call a classic, but I remember seeing it on a lot of websites. It feels way better than a lot of mobile games with similar concepts too. This one was probably kind of inappropriate for me to play as a kid. You start with this tiny, scrappy character in a little apartment, and the whole goal is to be the most insufferable kind of human possible. You upgrade your clothes, your car, your house, your hair, whatever makes you look cooler, and you have to keep being more and more of a douche every day to win a good rating and actually beat the game. There was also a douchebag workout before this game, which is basically the same idea but just inside of a tiny gym, so it's pretty boring. You punch, lift, do pull-ups, and just try to get buff instead of live a life. These games were really absurd and exactly the kind of weird flash stuff you'd see in the early 2010s. Finally, Super Smash Flash. I used to play this one a lot at school, and there's not really much to be said about it here, besides that it's an extremely cursed game. These games aren't official, and that was a huge trend for Flash games since copyright really wasn't something they had to worry about too much. You'd have popular characters and like Naruto soundtracks and random games. It was really weird. This game was pure jank too. It plays as bad as it looks, but I had a lot of fun with it at the time. Looking back on stuff like this makes me wish a lot of these games were still easy to play. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Big thanks to ft.DebunkFile for being featured in this video. Their link's in the description. You should definitely check them out. They're one of my favorite YouTube channels ever. And if you've got a Flash game I didn't mention or just a memory from one of these ones, please drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And yeah, stay tuned for a part 3 because there are still plenty more gems to revisit. I'd appreciate you leaving a like if you enjoyed this video, or maybe even a dislike if you hated it. And as always, have a wonderful day.